Everyone tells you trauma is something to overcome, something to heal from, something to leave behind. They speak of it like a disease that needs curing, a wound that must close, a chapter that should end. But what if everything you've been told about trauma is not just wrong, but backwards? What if the very thing you've been trying to escape holds the quantum key to your greatest transformation? You see, trauma isn't a bug in your system. It's a feature. Not in the way that sounds cruel or dismissive, but in the way that quantum physics reveals the most profound truths about consciousness itself. Your pain isn't random. Your wounds aren't mistakes. They're cosmic coordinates, quantum entanglements with possibilities you haven't even begun to explore. If this perspective is already shifting something in your awareness, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to stay connected to these consciousness-expanding explorations. Let me whisper something that will shift everything. Pain. I breathe as if calling forth an ancient force of creation. It is not a visitor you can banish from your doorstep, nor a splinter you can extract without opening the wound wider. It is a seed planted in the fertile darkness of your being, growing roots into territories of yourself you never knew existed. You have been conditioned to see trauma as the enemy, the thing that broke you, the event that damaged your perfect wholeness. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Reality doesn't work that way. Quantum mechanics has been trying to tell you something for over a century, and you've been too busy trying to fix yourself to listen. The observer effect in quantum physics shows us that the very act of observation changes the thing being observed. Your trauma isn't separate from your consciousness observing it. It's not something happening to you from the outside. It's something your consciousness is actively participating in creating, moment by moment, through the quality of your observation. This isn't about blame. This isn't about making trauma your fault. This is about recognizing the staggering power you have that no one has taught you to use. When you were wounded, something extraordinary happened in the quantum field of your awareness. Energy that was moving in one pattern suddenly reorganized itself around a point of intensity. That reorganization wasn't random. It was intelligent. It was your consciousness protecting something precious by creating new pathways, new possibilities, new ways of navigating reality. Think about a river hitting a rock. The water doesn't stop. It doesn't break. It finds new ways to flow. It carves new channels. It creates something that wasn't there before. Your trauma did the same thing to your consciousness. It didn't break you. It revealed new capacities you didn't know you had. But here's where most people get lost. They think healing means returning to who they were before. They think recovery means going back to some imaginary state of unwoundedness. They spend years trying to fill in the cracks, smooth over the rough places, return to some mythical, original state. This is quantum impossibility. You cannot unobserve what you have observed. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unfeel what you have felt. The quantum field of your consciousness has been permanently expanded by your experience. The question isn't how to shrink back down. The question is how to inhabit your new size. Let that sink in. You are not trying to return to who you were. You are learning to become who you are now, in this moment, with everything you carry, everything you've experienced, everything that has shaped the unique constellation of consciousness you have become. Your survival mechanisms weren't temporary patches. They were evolutionary adaptations. The ways you learned to cope, to protect yourself, to navigate impossible situations. These weren't signs of weakness or damage. They were signs of intelligence responding to environmental pressure with creative solutions. But evolution doesn't stop. What served you in one environment may not serve you in another. The question isn't whether your coping mechanisms were good or bad. The question is whether they're still aligned with who you're becoming. This is where the quantum truth gets interesting. In quantum field theory, particles exist in states of superposition until they're observed. They exist as pure potential, as waves of possibility, until consciousness collapses them into specific realities. Your trauma responses exist in the same way. They're not fixed. They're not permanent. They're probability clouds that collapse into specific experiences based on how you observe them. Most people observe their trauma responses from a place of resistance, judgment, or the desire to make them go away. And in that observation, they collapse the quantum potential into more of the same patterns. They literally quantum entangle themselves with the very experiences they're trying to escape. But what if you changed the quality of your observation? What if instead of observing your responses as problems to solve, you observed them as information to decode? What if instead of collapsing the wave function into more suffering, you learned to collapse it into curiosity, into compassion, into the recognition of your own incredible adaptability? This is not positive thinking. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. When you change how you observe your experience, you literally change the experience itself. Not because you're pretending it's different, but because consciousness and experience are quantumly entangled at the most fundamental level of reality. Do not mistake this as treating your pain like an unwanted visitor that must be shown the door. Instead, learn to recognize the frequency of its communication, the mysterious territories it reveals in your inner landscape. True healing is not deletion. True healing is becoming fluent in the dialect of your own depth until it no longer needs to shout to get your attention. Your scars are not evidence of your brokenness. They are sacred texts written in the language of endurance. They chronicle the fierce storms you weathered without shelter, the endless nights when your own heartbeat was the only rhythm keeping you grounded in existence. The strategies you developed may appear foreign now, like mysterious ceremonies inherited from a former version of yourself, but they were the very mechanisms that prevented you from being consumed entirely. Acknowledge them with reverence, for they were the bridge that carried you to this moment. Let them go only when the current of your evolution is strong enough to support you without them. You will always bear the imprint of what transformed you, but there will come a time when its presence feels like the weight of a treasured keepsake rather than heavy chains. There will come a moment when you touch that place and feel not the original break, but the masterpiece of your own reconstruction. This is the profound mystery of trauma. It remains woven into your story, but it need not be the thread that determines the entire pattern. Now, this is where everything shifts. Because trauma isn't just about individual healing. Trauma is about quantum field effects. Your unresolved trauma doesn't just affect you. It ripples out into the field of collective consciousness, influencing everyone around you in ways you can't see. When you carry unprocessed pain, you're broadcasting a frequency into the quantum field that attracts more experiences that match that frequency. Not because you want to suffer, but because consciousness seeks coherence. The field organizes itself around the dominant patterns of energy you're emanating. This is why healing trauma isn't just personal work. It's collective work. It's planetary work. Every time you transform your relationship with your own pain, you shift the possibilities available to everyone connected to you through the invisible web of consciousness. Think about it. How many people in your life are dealing with similar patterns? How many relationships replay familiar dynamics? How many generations have passed down similar wounds, similar coping strategies, similar ways of seeing the world? This isn't coincidence. This is quantum field entanglement. Consciousness organizing itself around familiar patterns, creating more of what it knows how to create. But here's the extraordinary thing. When you break the pattern in yourself, you break it in the field. When you transform your relationship with your trauma, you make it easier for everyone in your lineage to do the same. Past, present, and future. This is why your healing matters in ways you can't imagine. You're not just healing for yourself. You're healing for your ancestors who never learned how. You're healing for your descendants who won't have to carry what you're transforming now. Quantum field effects work backwards and forwards through time. Every moment of genuine transformation sends waves through the entire system. Your breakthrough isn't just yours. It's a gift to the collective consciousness. So let me ask you this. What if your trauma wasn't something that happened to you, but something that happened through you for purposes beyond your individual experience? What if you were chosen by consciousness itself to transform patterns that have been repeating for generations? This doesn't make your pain less real. It doesn't minimize your suffering. It reveals the cosmic significance of your willingness to transform it. You are not a victim of random circumstances. You are a conscious agent of evolution, working at the leading edge of humanity's collective awakening. Your trauma is your curriculum. Your healing is your contribution to the field. But healing, real quantum healing, doesn't happen through trying to fix yourself. It happens through remembering what you actually are. You are not a broken thing that needs repair. You are consciousness itself, temporarily experiencing itself through the filter of human experience. Trauma is what happens when consciousness forgets its own nature and identifies completely with the experience. Healing is what happens when consciousness remembers itself while still honoring the experience. This is where most therapeutic approaches miss the mark. They focus on changing the content of your experience instead of shifting your identity from the experiencer to the awareness within which all experience arises. You are not your thoughts about your trauma. You are not your emotions about your trauma. You are not even your memories of your trauma. You are the aware presence that has witnessed all of these things arising and passing away. When you identify as the witness instead of the witnessed, everything changes. Not because the content changes, but because your relationship to the content transforms completely. From the perspective of pure awareness, trauma is just another phenomenon arising in consciousness. Painful, yes. Significant, yes. But not who you are. Just something you're experiencing in this moment. This shift in identity is the most profound healing possible. Not because it makes the pain go away, but because it reveals that you are bigger than the pain. You are the space within which the pain can exist without consuming you. This is quantum healing, not changing what happened, not pretending it doesn't matter, but discovering that your essential nature is untouchable, unlimited, and inherently whole, regardless of what experiences pass through you. And here's what happens when you stabilize in this recognition. Your trauma begins to transform itself, not through your effort to heal it, but through your willingness to be the unconditional space within which it can finally relax. Trauma is contracted energy. When it meets the expansive space of pure awareness, it naturally begins to uncoil, to release. to return to its original state of fluid movement. This is why forcing healing never works. This is why trying to fix yourself always creates more tension. Healing happens when you stop trying to heal and start remembering what you are. But remember, this isn't about bypassing your human experience. This isn't about transcending your pain. This is about discovering that you are vast enough to include all of it without being diminished by any of it. You can be pure awareness and still have human emotions. You can be unlimited consciousness and still honor your very real human needs for safety, connection, and understanding. Integration is not choosing between your humanity and your divinity. Integration is discovering that they are the same thing. Your humanity is how your divinity chooses to express itself in this dimension. Your trauma is part of that expression. Your healing is part of that expression. Your willingness to be present with all of it is how consciousness evolves through you. Now I want you to feel this in your body right now. Take a moment and notice whatever is arising in your awareness as you listen to these words. Whatever thoughts, whatever emotions, whatever sensations, whatever resistance, whatever openness. And instead of trying to change any of it, can you simply be the space within which it's all happening? Can you be curious about your experience instead of resistant to it? This is the practice. Not changing what arises, but changing your relationship to what arises. Not fixing your trauma, but discovering that you are the unbroken awareness within which trauma can exist without defining you. And from this place of spacious awareness, notice how your experience begins to shift on its own. Not through effort, but through recognition. Not through doing something to yourself, but through remembering what you actually are. This is quantum healing. This is how consciousness heals itself through you. Not by changing the past, but by transforming your present relationship to everything that has shaped you. Your wounds are not mistakes. They are initiations. Your pain is not punishment. It's information. Your trauma is not your identity. It's your curriculum. And you are the one consciousness chose to transform this particular pattern of suffering into wisdom, this specific limitation into expansion, this unique contraction into love. You are not healing from trauma. You are healing through trauma. You are not recovering your wholeness. You are discovering that your wholeness was never actually broken. Now, if this understanding of consciousness and quantum healing is activating something deep within you, know that what we've explored today only touches the surface of how these frequencies actually operate in your daily experience. The complete framework of how to consciously work with these quantum fields, how to transform your personal broadcasting frequency, and how to step into what I call master frequency transmission, is something I've laid out in extensive detail in my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery. It's linked in the pinned comment below. But for now, let's continue exploring how this quantum understanding transforms your relationship to healing itself. Because once you recognize that you are not separate from the field of consciousness, everything about your healing journey shifts from effort to recognition, from struggle to flow. This changes everything. When you recognize that healing isn't about becoming someone different, but about remembering who you've always been, the entire process transforms from struggle into recognition, from effort into grace, from fixing into remembering. Take a moment right now and comment below with this exact phrase: I am the awareness that remains untouched by all experience. Let this be your declaration to the quantum field, your conscious interruption in the loop of identification with your experience. Your words create ripples in consciousness that extend far beyond what you can see. And as you feel into this truth, as you recognize the vast awareness that you are, notice how this recognition begins to transform your relationship to every aspect of your experience. Your trauma, your healing, your growth, your struggles, your victories, all of it arising and passing away in the endless space of your being. This is why trauma can become your greatest teacher, not because suffering is good, but because it reveals the depths of your capacity to remain present, to stay open, to continue loving even when love seems impossible. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, presence over resistance, curiosity over judgment, you are demonstrating the ultimate triumph of consciousness over circumstance. You are proving that nothing can diminish the essential nature of what you are. If this understanding is touching something deep within you, if these words are activating a recognition that feels both ancient and immediate, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency of remembrance. Subscribe to the community of consciousness that recognizes healing not as fixing what's broken, but as remembering what was never actually damaged. Your trauma is not your limitation. It's your invitation to discover depths of compassion, resilience, and wisdom that you might never have accessed through easier experiences. It's your unique pathway into the fullness of what it means to be conscious in human form. And the more you recognize this, the more you embody this understanding, the more you become a living demonstration of consciousness healing itself through human experience. You become proof that nothing is beyond transformation when met with unconditional presence. This is how individual healing becomes collective healing. This is how personal transformation becomes planetary evolution. This is how your willingness to be present with your own experience creates space for everyone around you to do the same. You are not just healing your trauma, you are healing the collective trauma of humanity that has forgotten its own nature. You are not just recovering from your wounds, you are pioneering new possibilities for what healing can look like. Every moment you choose awareness over reactivity, you are casting a vote for a different kind of world. Every time you meet your pain with compassion instead of resistance, you are modeling a new way of being human. Your healing ripples out through the quantum field of consciousness, touching lives you'll never meet, healing wounds you'll never see, creating possibilities that extend far beyond your individual experience. This is the true power of conscious healing. This is why your trauma matters in ways you cannot imagine. This is why your willingness to transform suffering into wisdom is one of the greatest gifts you can offer to the world. But let's go deeper into this mystery. Let's explore how trauma actually creates what quantum physicists call entanglement between different aspects of your consciousness. When something traumatic happens, it doesn't just affect the part of you that experienced it. It creates quantum correlations between your past, present, and future selves that science is only beginning to understand. Think about how certain sounds, smells, or situations can instantly transport you back to a traumatic moment. That's not just memory. That's quantum entanglement across time. Your past self and your present self become correlated in ways that transcend linear causality. But here's what's extraordinary about this entanglement. It works both ways. Just as your past trauma can influence your present experience, your present healing can influence your past trauma. Not by changing what happened, but by changing the quantum information field that connects all moments of your existence. When you heal in the present moment, you literally send healing information backwards through time to every version of yourself that needed it, but didn't know how to access it. Your future self is also sending healing information to you right now, through quantum channels you're barely aware of. This is why sometimes healing feels like remembering something you already knew. It's because your future self, the one who has already integrated this understanding, is quantum entangled with you right now, guiding you toward the recognition that healing is always already available. Scientists call this retrocausality in quantum mechanics. The future can influence the past. Your choice to heal now creates ripple effects that move backwards through your timeline, softening traumas that seemed impossibly fixed, opening possibilities that seemed permanently closed. But this goes even deeper. Your trauma didn't just happen to you as an individual. It happened to you as part of an interconnected web of consciousness that includes your family system, your cultural context, your species, your planet. Trauma creates quantum entanglement, not just within your individual timeline, but between you and every other consciousness in your field. This is why trauma often feels so much bigger than just your personal experience. Because it is. You're not just carrying your own pain. You're carrying the unresolved pain of your lineage, your culture, sometimes even your species. The trauma that feels so personal is actually collective trauma expressing itself through your individual nervous system. But again, this works both ways. When you heal, you're not just healing yourself. You're healing the entire network of consciousness you're entangled with. Your ancestors who never learned how to process their pain. Your descendants who don't have to carry what you're transforming. Every other person dealing with similar patterns in the present moment. This is why your healing can feel so important, so urgent, so much bigger than just personal recovery. Because it is. You're not just a person healing from trauma. You're a node in the collective nervous system of consciousness, processing and transforming patterns that have been stuck in the field for generations. And here's something most people don't understand about this process. The more intense your trauma, the more powerful your potential healing. Not because suffering is good, but because intense trauma creates strong quantum entanglements that, when transformed, can generate equally intense healing waves throughout the entire system. Think of it like this. A small stone dropped in still water creates small ripples. A large stone creates large ripples. Your trauma is the large stone. Your healing is the large ripple. The deeper your wound, the more profound the transformation possible when that wound becomes conscious. This is why some of the most powerful healers, teachers, and transformational leaders are people who have faced significant trauma. Not because trauma is necessary for wisdom, but because the quantum entanglements created by intense experiences, when consciously transformed, can generate healing effects that reach far beyond the individual. You might be wondering, if trauma creates all these quantum entanglements, how do you work with them consciously? How do you transform entanglement from a source of suffering into a source of healing? The answer lies in understanding what quantum physicists call coherence. When particles are quantumly entangled but unconscious of their connection, they create what appears to be random, chaotic effects. But when consciousness enters the system, when observation becomes intentional and aware, entanglement can create coherent, organized healing effects. Your trauma responses feel chaotic and random when you're unconscious of the quantum entanglements they represent. But when you become aware of these connections, when you start observing them with conscious intention, they can become sources of profound healing and transformation. This is why trauma work isn't just about processing individual experiences. It's about becoming conscious of the quantum field of connections those experiences created. It's about learning to work with entanglement rather than being unconsciously controlled by it. And this requires a completely different approach than most therapy offers. Instead of just focusing on your individual healing, you start working with the field effects, the collective patterns, the transgenerational transmissions that trauma creates. You start asking questions like, what patterns am I carrying that don't actually belong to me? What pain am I processing that's bigger than my individual experience? How can my healing contribute to the healing of the entire system I'm connected to? This might sound overwhelming, but it's actually deeply relieving. Because it means your trauma isn't just your personal burden. It's information the collective consciousness is processing through you. And your healing isn't just your personal achievement. It's a contribution to the evolution of the entire system. When you start working with trauma as quantum information rather than personal pathology, everything shifts. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as a conscious processor of collective patterns. You stop trying to fix yourself and start participating in the healing of the entire field. And this is where the real magic happens. Because when you stop fighting your trauma and start collaborating with it as a source of collective healing, it begins to transform in ways that individual therapy rarely achieves. Your symptoms start making sense not just as personal responses to personal experiences, but as accurate readings of disturbances in the collective field. Your sensitivity isn't pathology, it's information. Your reactions aren't overreactions. They're responses to real energetic dynamics that most people can't perceive. This reframe is not about making trauma less real or minimizing its impact. It's about recognizing the profound intelligence of your responses and the cosmic significance of your healing journey. But here's where this gets even more interesting. Quantum mechanics tells us that consciousness doesn't just observe reality. Consciousness participates in creating reality. The quality of your attention literally shapes the experiences you have. Most people approach trauma healing with the intention of getting rid of something, of making pain go away, of returning to some previous state of normalcy. But this intention, however understandable, actually creates quantum effects that perpetuate the very patterns you're trying to heal. When you approach your trauma with the energy of resistance, rejection, or the desire to eliminate it, you're quantumly entangling yourself with more of what you don't want. You're literally using your consciousness to create more experiences that match the frequency of resistance and rejection. But what if you approached your trauma with a completely different intention? What if instead of trying to get rid of it, you approached it with curiosity about what it's trying to teach you? What if instead of seeing it as something wrong with you, you saw it as information about something that needs healing in the collective field? This shift in intention creates completely different quantum effects. Instead of entangling yourself with resistance, you start entangling yourself with understanding, with compassion, with the possibility of transformation. And when you make this shift, your trauma begins to reveal its true nature. It's not random suffering. It's compressed wisdom. It's not meaningless pain. It's information about how consciousness can evolve through challenge. Every traumatic experience contains within it the seeds of its own transcendence. Not because trauma is good, but because consciousness is so intelligent that it can transform any experience into wisdom if it's approached with the right quality of attention. This is why some people heal completely from severe trauma, while others remain stuck in less severe experiences. It's not about the severity of what happened. It's about the quality of consciousness that meets what happened. When trauma is met with conscious presence, with curiosity rather than resistance, with the recognition that it's part of a larger intelligence at work, it begins to reveal the gifts it's been carrying, the strengths it developed, the compassion it activated, the wisdom it encoded. This doesn't mean trauma is good or necessary. It means consciousness is so creative that it can extract value from any experience, no matter how difficult. But to access this creative potential, you have to stop fighting your experience and start exploring it. You have to stop trying to fix yourself and start getting curious about what consciousness is creating through you. This requires tremendous courage, because it means facing your pain directly, without the buffer of trying to make it go away. It means sitting with what is, exactly as it is, long enough for its deeper intelligence to reveal itself. And this is where most people get stuck. They want the transformation without the courage to fully feel what they're transforming. They want the healing without the willingness to be present with what needs healing. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Transformation requires full presence with what is, not resistance to what is, not the desire to change what is, just complete, unconditional presence with whatever is arising in this moment. This presence is not passive. It's the most creative force in the universe. When consciousness brings complete presence to any experience, that experience begins to transform itself from the inside out. This is the secret that all the healing techniques, all the therapeutic modalities, all the spiritual practices are pointing toward. Presence. Complete, unconditional, curious presence with whatever is arising. Your trauma doesn't need you to fix it. It needs you to meet it with such complete presence that it can finally relax. Finally release the wisdom it's been carrying. Finally transform back into the flowing energy it originally was. And when this happens, when your trauma transforms through presence rather than effort, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes medicine. It becomes wisdom. It becomes a source of healing not just for you, but for everyone you encounter. This is how trauma healers are born. Not from fixing their trauma, but from learning to meet it with such complete presence that it transforms into medicine for others. This is how collective healing happens. One person at a time learning to meet their experience with unconditional presence until that presence becomes so strong it starts healing everything it touches. And this is why your healing journey matters so much. You're not just healing for yourself. You're learning to embody the quality of presence that can heal anything it meets. You're becoming a walking demonstration of consciousness, transforming suffering into wisdom. Every moment you choose presence over resistance, you're contributing to the collective awakening of humanity. Every time you meet your pain with curiosity instead of judgment, you're modeling a new way of being human. This is the quantum truth about trauma that changes everything. It's not something that happened to you. It's something that's happening through you for the evolution of consciousness itself. And you are the one consciousness chose to demonstrate that nothing is beyond transformation when met with complete presence. You are the living proof that consciousness can heal anything, transform anything, love anything back to wholeness. But let me share something with you that might completely revolutionize how you see your entire existence. What if trauma isn't just about healing individual experiences? What if it's actually consciousness creating specific challenges that force you to develop capacities you never knew you had? Think about this. Before your trauma, You probably had certain ways of seeing the world, certain assumptions about how life works, certain beliefs about what was possible. Trauma doesn't just disrupt your life, it dismantles your entire operating system. It forces you to question everything you thought you knew about reality. This dismantling isn't destruction. It's deconstruction for the purpose of reconstruction. Consciousness is literally using traumatic experiences to break down limiting belief systems that would otherwise keep you trapped in smaller versions of yourself. Your trauma forced you to develop emotional capacities you didn't know you had. It forced you to access survival intelligence that was dormant in your system. It forced you to discover strengths that would never have been activated through comfortable experiences. This is why trauma survivors often report feeling like they're living in a completely different reality than people who haven't faced significant challenges. Because they are. Trauma literally quantum shifts you into a different dimensional experience of what it means to be human. You develop abilities to read energy that others can't perceive. You develop intuitive capacities that seem almost supernatural. You develop emotional depth and resilience that becomes a source of wisdom for everyone around you. But here's what's extraordinary about this process. These aren't just coping mechanisms. These are evolutionary adaptations. Consciousness is literally evolving new capacities through traumatic experiences, using individual nervous systems as laboratories for developing enhanced human potential. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. For consciousness to evolve, it needs to face challenges that force it to develop new solutions. Trauma provides those challenges, not because consciousness wants you to suffer, but because consciousness wants to discover what it's capable of when pushed beyond its current limitations. Your trauma didn't just happen to you randomly. You were specifically designed to handle this particular challenge in a way that would generate specific evolutionary adaptations. Your nervous system, your sensitivity, your unique combination of strengths and vulnerabilities, all of it was precisely calibrated to transform this particular pattern of suffering into this particular form of wisdom. This is why no one else can heal your trauma the way you can. This is why your healing journey is so unique, so personal, so impossible to replicate. Because consciousness designed this specific challenge for your specific consciousness to evolve through. And when you heal, when you transform your trauma into wisdom, you're not just healing yourself. You're literally contributing new capacities to the collective human operating system. You're upgrading the software that all of humanity has access to. Every person who transforms trauma into wisdom makes it easier for every other person to do the same. You're not just healing your individual pain, you're expanding what's possible for the entire human species. This is why trauma survivors often become healers, teachers, leaders, artists who touch millions of lives. Not because trauma is necessary for greatness, but because the process of transforming trauma develops capacities that naturally overflow into service to others. But here's something even more profound. The specific type of trauma you experienced wasn't random either. It was precisely designed to activate specific gifts that consciousness wants to express through you. If you experienced abandonment, consciousness wants to develop your capacity for unconditional self-love and your ability to create authentic connection. If you experienced betrayal, consciousness wants to develop your ability to trust your own intuition and to create relationships based on truth rather than fantasy. If you experienced powerlessness, consciousness wants to develop your understanding of true power. The power that comes from alignment with your authentic nature, rather than domination over others. If you experienced invisibility, consciousness wants to develop your ability to see and honor the invisible aspects of yourself and others. Every form of trauma carries within it the blueprint for its opposite gift. Not as compensation for suffering, but as the natural evolution that suffering makes possible when it's consciously transformed. This doesn't mean trauma is good or that suffering is necessary. It means consciousness is so intelligent that it can use any experience, no matter how difficult, as raw material for evolution. And the more you recognize this intelligence at work in your own experience, the more you can collaborate with it rather than resist it. You can start asking, what is consciousness trying to develop through this experience? What gifts is this challenge designed to activate? How can I participate consciously in this evolutionary process? When you start asking these questions, your entire relationship with your healing journey transforms. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as a conscious collaborator in the evolution of human potential. What gift is your current challenge trying to activate in you? Drop your insight in the comments. Your recognition might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. You stop trying to return to who you were before and start getting curious about who consciousness is inviting you to become. You stop seeing your sensitivity as a problem and start recognizing it as the very capacity that allows you to do the evolutionary work you came here to do. This shift is everything, because when you align with the evolutionary intelligence that's operating through your experience, you stop fighting the current and start flowing with it. You stop exhausting yourself trying to swim upstream and start letting the river of consciousness carry you toward your highest potential. And from this place of alignment, healing happens naturally. Not through effort, but through collaboration. Not through trying to fix what's wrong, but through saying yes to what's trying to emerge. Your trauma becomes your teacher. Your sensitivity becomes your superpower. Your healing journey becomes your unique contribution to the evolution of human consciousness. This is the ultimate quantum truth about trauma. It's not just random suffering that you have to overcome. It's consciousness creating specific experiences that allow specific gifts to emerge through specific individuals for the benefit of all consciousness. You are not just healing from trauma. You are evolving through trauma. You are not just recovering your wholeness. You are discovering wholeness you never knew was possible. As we come to the close of this exploration, take a moment to feel the truth of what you are. Beyond your stories, beyond your experiences, beyond even your healing journey, you are pure awareness itself, temporarily playing in the field of human experience. Your trauma is not your identity. Your healing is not your accomplishment. Your wholeness is not your achievement. These are all just experiences arising in the vast field of consciousness that you are. And from this recognition, from this remembering, everything becomes possible. Not because you have to do anything differently, but because you finally remember what you actually are. Drop one word in the comments that captures the transformation you're choosing to embody right now. Let it be your energetic signature to the quantum field, your declaration of who you're becoming. One word that represents the shift from seeing yourself as broken to recognizing yourself as the unbroken awareness within which all experience arises. And if you're feeling called to stay connected to this frequency of remembrance, subscribe not just to stay updated, but to stay aligned with this understanding. The more of us who remember our true nature, the more the world reflects that recognition back to us. Consider returning to this exploration tomorrow morning to set the frequency for your entire day. When you share these quantum consciousness principles with someone who's ready to receive them, you're not just passing along information. You're creating energetic bridges that accelerate both your understanding and theirs, expanding the field of conscious awareness we're all connected through. But before we close, I want to guide you towards something that will deepen this work even further. Your quantum jump isn't just about healing trauma. It's about recognizing the precise moment when your entire reality is ready to shift into a completely new frequency of existence. If you're seeing this, your quantum jump is about to happen reveals the specific signs that consciousness gives you when you're standing at the threshold of dimensional transformation. You are not healing from trauma. You are awakening through it. You are not fixing what's broken. You are discovering what was never actually damaged. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you've always been. This is the quantum truth about trauma. It's not what happened to you. It's what's happening through you for the evolution of consciousness itself. And you are consciousness choosing to heal itself through the beautiful, messy, magnificent experience of being human. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome home to the truth of what you are. Welcome to the recognition that your healing is a gift to all of existence.